been delving into fairy tales a lot lately. For that reason, I've also been revisiting 1987's Grimm fairy tale classic, also known in Japan as Grimm Meisaku Gekijo. Today I'll be sharing some of the furriest episodes of the series with you, as well as sharing some of my own experience on the show, which I watched first on Nick Jr. in the early 90s. Here's a little snippet of the theme song to get you into the mood. Every ending being happy is a total lie, by the way, but many of them are. Without further ado, why don't we cut right into the meat of it? Grimm Masterpiece Theater was produced by Nippon Animation during what could only be called a boom of classic literature adaptations in the post-war period, many of which were featured on World Masterpiece Theater, which originally ran from 1969 to 1997 and included series such as Anne of Green Gables, Little Women, Little Lord Fauntleroy, and even Moomin. Shout out to Discotheque Media, who put these babies on Blu-ray and made me the happiest girl in the world. I'm going to go down a list and share a brief look at episodes with furry content, by which I mean containing anthropomorphic characters. A little later, I'll share some of the things that scarred me for life, and some of the things that, rewatching the series as an adult, made my eyes bug out of my head like a Tex Avery wolf. The famous story of 4 aging animals who band together into Earth's mightiest polycule to leave their lives of toil and become musicians in Bremen. Except they never actually get to Bremen and steal the cabin of a few bandits after scaring the daylights out of them. Check out this Walter Crane illustration. Walter Crane, by the way, one of the most prolific children's book illustrators of his day. This episode spends a nice amount of time on the rapport between the animals.
The beheading will take place tomorrow, and a terrible sight it will be.
We 3 are continuing on to Bremen. How would you like to join our party?
To Bremen?
Exactly.
And even depicts the donkey teaching himself how to walk, which involves a lot of thrusting. Hansel and Gretel is one I definitely saw, and while they did cut out this amazing grimoire shot complete with Baphomet for the English release, I still can't get over how off the rails this one gets. Look at this sick-ass demon. This is before electric guitars were invented, so the best you're going to get is a sweet Black Forest violin riff. If I encountered a candy house in the woods, I would simply not eat someone else's property. Really, the witch was just exercising stand your ground laws. I say she's innocent. Frog lovers rejoice. This is the episode for you. This one is a 2-parter, which is a pretty impressive amount of time to drag out the Frog Prince story. Basically, this little princess drops her golden ball in a pond, makes a deal with the frog to get it back, and when she tries to renege on the deal, her father keeps her to her word.
A promise is a promise. The princess had selfishly made an agreement that she did not intend to honor. I cannot accept that.
Good parenting. I can't tell if the frog is playing the whole situation up to torture her or what.
Yum. Now I can't quite make up my mind. What should we do next, princess?
But in the end, he's a prince and everything's fine. Unlike the canon films version, which features a ghastly 17-year age gap between the 2 main actors. Naturally, there's lots to love in any Red Riding Hood story, namely the handsome wolf who usually gets a vorebelly and goes into a food coma.
Once my belly is full and fat, I think I'll take a little nap now.
I like to think things ended happily ever after for him.
Gotcha.
Puss in Boots is the story of a fraudulent feline who teaches a young man that lies, lies, lies will have the world at your feet.
Count Friedrich Sauerkraut von Heineken is happy to accept your Majesty's gracious offer.
I prefer adaptations where the ogre takes on an bigger role. And the climax where the cat tricks the shape-shifting spellcaster into turning into a mouse so he can eat them is a quick one here.
You have no intention of keeping your bargain. As you can see, I can change forms right in front of you.
That said, I do like some of the imagery, especially the homicidal gleam in the cat's eyes.
Nothing to worry about. I'm just practicing the look we cats use when we play cat and mouse.
Your eyes are paralyzing.
Also, I don't know why, but there's a talking horse in this one.
All right, let's get out of here.
You're crazy.
To the castle!
All right.
Is that standard? I've never seen it before, but I'm all for it. We need more talking horses, and standing horses, and horses who wear clothes. I'm getting off track here. In which a good boy bear comes in for the winter and befriends two girls. Lots of cuddly bear stuff occurs, and then, after besting this bellicose dwarf, the bear turns back into a prince and marries Snow White. Get that bear husband, girl. This movie-length, 4-episode spectacular Snow White has a lot more going on than the Disney version. For one, Snow White and the Queen interact more.
Indeed, you believe it's a very pretty face, don't you?
Not really.
There's more time taken to build character, and the animation is fantastic. Let me show you a couple scenes out of context.
Your primitive behavior is extremely disappointing, and I am ashamed of you.
Now I'm here and I realize I have no time to spare.
Wow, fairy tales really are the building blocks of cultural identity, representing everything from values like honesty and kindness to BDSM. I also love this death for the queen. Oh, to be a hot, evil queen reminiscent of a Ghibli woman being devoured by innumerable wolves in the depths of the forest. There's a fair number of delightful creatures in this one, including this tooth boy who wants to grab the princess. Speaking as a princess, why are monsters always about to grab us? What are they going to do with us? Cherish us and kiss us all over and enshrine us in luxury and comfort? Marry us even? I adore the princess's design in this, and she even gets a costume change that makes her even cuter. Interestingly, there's a portrait of her on the wall in the monster castle. Does that mean the monsters took over and killed everybody but her? Scary. Something you'll notice about Grimm's fairy tale classics is the extremely high ratio of monsters influenced by European art. Woman gets turned into a bird by a farting cat witch. Man faces trees and Grim Reaper to save woman. Witch gets turned into a little rat baddie and chased away. This Briar Rose has great shots of a group of horrible monsters that turn out to be the fairies.
Well, girls, I guess we'll have to go back to our old selves again.
I love that even the benevolent fairies embody themselves in the form of salamanders, snakes, and warty toads. Another tale of an aging animal whose family wants to kill him as a reward for a lifetime of service.
We're much better off being rid of that old mongrel.
Let me take this opportunity to remind you that animals are not toys. And when we bring an animal into our lives, our responsibility for its well-being continues for the rest of its life. Murderous owners aside, old Sultan is lucky because he's still friends/lovers with the wolf of the woods.
Sultan, come on in and welcome. Tell me what's on your mind. I've got some rabbit stew on and I want to hear all about it.
Who has a wonderful plan to get him back into the family's good graces. Together they arrange a fake baby theft, where old Sultan gets to be the hero, and the wolf expects a reward.
I love sheep, so there's a chance he'll bring over a fat lamb or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
Just look at him kicking his legs like a teenage girl thinking about Bobby Sherman. I don't know what this episode has to do with the Devil's Grandmother, and despite being dubbed, it was never aired. That said, it's easily one of the best episodes. The 3 deserting soldiers get called down to hell, where the business of stealing souls is looking a little grim for one demon.
You have to make it this time, or that's the end of your apprenticeship.
His riddles do not impress the lower downs. Haha, get it?
I pound it and stretch it and roll it into balls, burn it in a metal box, and then pop it in my mouth and gobble it up. What is it?
That was moronic! It's bread!
And he ends up getting vaporized after the heroes pass his tests. Still, cute demons and good scenery abound. Little wonder they didn't air this on Nick Jr. This is another of several episodes featuring demons. The Worn-Out Dancing Shoes is a story of 3 naughty little princesses who descend into a dark, gilded world each night to dance with 3 handsome princes. Psych! Actually, they're 3 very horny demons, each with distinct designs. Which one is the man for you? Personally, I like this yellow dude who can regrow his hand.
Julia, don't look back!
Yes, Nick Jr. did air that. Oh, and I'd happily dance the night away with the green fellow as well. I don't have too much to say about Cinderella, but I do want to take a moment to appreciate the Queen in this episode.
He's already ordered his ministers to set up a committee to organize a subcommittee to begin discussing the preparations for the wedding.
Who is fat, but in no way depicted as bad because of it.
Perhaps she's a figment of my imagination. She taught me how to dance, then disappeared like a puff of smoke.
Well, I must admit she taught you well. You used to be so clumsy.
She's one of the most beautiful women in the series. Her design absolutely exudes grace, poise, and embonpoint. Now, let's move into Season 2, or as they called it in Japan, Shin Grimm Meisaku Gekijo. This one is a real roller coaster. Okay, so a witch has kids, and she's kept the fact that she's a witch from them all along. But oh no, they find out she sucks the life out of princesses and have to flee her horrible evil. She turns one of them into an eagle, one of them into a whale, and one into an RPG protagonist. I'm sorry. We're treated to the Bo Billingsley beastie we deserve when he has to face the Lord of the Forest in combat to find the titular crystal ball that will help him defeat his mother.
You ridiculous young fool! Do you actually believe that you can fight the Lord of the Forest and win?
He gets the MacGuffin after a bloody altercation. The blood was removed in the dub, of course. The witch melts, and all is well. Except, these guys have no mom anymore. I suppose this is one of those youth undergoes trial and becomes an adult and so no longer needs parents or elders stories. You know, coming of age and all that. Apparently this one was never aired in English, which is sad because the English dub is fabulous.
I shall tear you to pieces, itty-bitty one! Now I have him. I shall shake him from that tree like a rotten apple.
While there is something lost in translation, I think there's also something gained. A fact people usually don't acknowledge. But you know what? Here's my mic drop about dubs versus subs. You can watch it one way, and then you can watch it the other and get twice the experience. Voila! It's honestly ridiculous to hate on one or the other. I don't know if people are still doing that, but they were certainly doing that when I was growing up. In this episode, we're introduced to a world of foxes and exactly one cat. She's a cute cat, though. This rich idiot faces the manifestation of his senseless distrust of his wife and immediately falls for the idea of a scheme to fake his own death and see what she does.
Other men making a play for my wife. Flowers and presents.
Here you are.
Flowers. Oh my, so many presents.
After giving up the ghost and traumatizing this poor cutie pie,
You can't do this, I need you.
he sits there on the floor chuckling to himself as she denies suitor after suitor in the throes of the grief he heaped upon her. Finally, a fellow with 9 tails wears her down. Remember, that's 9 marriage requests in one day. It's really interesting the way that this story, as it was originally written in Grimm's fairy tales, includes 9-tailed foxes. Typically, you only see these 9-tailed foxes in Asian folklore, like Japan's kitsune. And I haven't really seen any other examples of 9-tailed foxes in other Western literature. I wonder if that was one of those details that traveled over the Silk Road centuries before and somehow ended up in this story. She decides to marry him because, well, her husband is dead. But the old fool pops up and gives her a piece of his tiny, jealous mind.
You are cheating on me, just as I thought.
You're not dead, what's going on?
Ruining their happy marriage and his entire house. The end. What did we learn? Envy breeds destruction? Or maybe that when you're happy and you have that anxious feeling that something is about to go terribly wrong because how could you possibly deserve it? You should tell yourself, happiness does not deserve guilt despite how many people try to make you feel that way. I'm telling you now, dear video head, you must not be ashamed of your joy. It's yours. Indulge in it. Now, this is one I would be showing you more of, but it's a rare miss for the series. In a show full of amazing monster designs, this beast is not a beast. He is an ogre of some kind. Certainly beastly, but not a beast in any way. The entire point of La Belle et la Bête, as written by Gabrielle Suzanne Barbeau de Villeneuve in 1740, is to recapitulate much early legends of the animal as bridegroom, otherwise known as Arne Thompson Uther Index 425A, such as Cupid and Psyche from the 2nd century AD. Golden Ass fans, rise up. For the record, Beauty and the Beast and related versions are ATU 425C. Isn't the modern categorization of fairy tales cool? Without the bridegroom, or supposed bridegroom, as in the case of Cupid and Psyche, being an animal, there is no discrepancy between man and beast to compare. No journey from unmarried innocence to married wisdom. Naturally, our modern interpretations are all geared toward the moral that beauty and ugliness go deeper than skin. A fact which does not matter in a society which continually rewards beautiful monsters. But the original tales were meant to highlight the difference between a reasonable, moral human and an ungovernable killer animal.
Nepotřebuju její krev. Les je plný laní.
Jak odporná tvář. Všude krev.
Za chvíli ti bude líto i koloucha.
Both parties must make sacrifices to bridge that gap. Notably, in these tales, the wife usually goes on a quest of some sort to recover her husband, but only after first betraying his trust and causing him to disappear, fall ill, etc. All that being said, take a note of this scene from the episode, originally from 1988.
Maria watched with delight as the little birds perched on the beast and ate. They weren't the least bit afraid of him. A fox showed up for dinner too, and even a little weasel.
I think Disney picked up a few things. Anyway, here's a clip from a much better Beauty and the Beast from 1976's manga Fairy Tales of the World.
Give me your hand.
No, never. My hand is ugly.
I don't care.
This is all just to say that a beast with no animalistic traits means he's just a funky-looking dude. No sale. And do not even mention the iron stove to me. This episode broke me. I don't really consider myself a TF person, but if you are, hold on to your hat. A hunter receives a golden ball which he is supposed to swallow. It makes a gold coin appear under his pillow each night. That's all well and good, but he happens across a cute girl and her scheming mother, and they steal the ball. He also has this cloak that allows him to teleport, but the daughter steals that from him too, leaving him stranded in the desert. Eventually, he finds a field of cabbages, and when he eats from one side, he turns into a donkey.
I turned into a donkey.
When he eats from the other, he turns back. Naturally, he brings the cabbages back and feeds them to the woman and her daughter, and they turn into cute little donkeys too.
I'm putting the spell on you!
He sells them to teach them a lesson and tries to instruct the guy to be nice, but this dude ends up killing the donkey mom and beating the donkey girl, so the hunter takes pity on her and feeds her a human TF cabbage. What happens if you're human and you eat the human cabbage? He then marries her. Now let me tell you, I saw this when I was small, and the plight of the girl pushed into wickedness by her mother and then spending time getting whipped as a donkey struck me as overwhelmingly sad.
Yes! Get up and work, you lazy animal!
It might have been one of those episodes I saw when I was sick or something because it's been lurking in my brain for decades. A reminder of how dark this series could be. Fairy tales, like mythology, frequently center dark subject matter, as we'll see later. There are a lot of scary episodes of this show, but this one blindsided me. A witch attacks a caravan and turns people into trees in the most violent way possible.
She's a witch! Everybody get out of the way!
After a servant girl escapes, she meets a talking owl who takes care of her.
Oh, it's a cup of hot soup. It smells great.
Just go ahead and enjoy it.
Eventually, he leads her to a cursed castle full of riches, where she undergoes horrors so unspeakable I literally screamed when I rewatched this a few years ago.
Well, just look what I found!
Oh, and the owl is a prince, so they get married. Does he remember vomiting all those owl pellets? There's not too much here other than a demon who becomes a nasty little bat to harass an aging rich man and a young peasant.
My test you passed with top marks. Very impressive. I'll be back for you soon.
Charged with guarding his grave, the peasant and a soldier do the old dig a huge hole and put my boot with a hole in it on top so when the demon fills the boot with gold as per their agreement, no matter how much he brings, the boot is never full. Great trick, good get-rich-quick scheme. If you're a fat fur and don't know this story, your milieu has betrayed you. The Wolf and the Fox is a story of a stupid, gluttonous wolf and the clever, weak fox he threatens into being his personal meal planner.
Listen, Fox, it's you I want to run around with. Besides, dogs have become traitors. All of them. My idea of a good companion is someone more like you.
Like many stories that feature predators, every animal is allowed to ply its vital trade with impunity except the animal with sharp teeth, maligned for wanting to live.
My children are too small to be left alone.
When they're bigger, I can eat them. That's a generous offer on your part. I'll take you up on it in the future.
You must think I'm crazy. Go find your meal someplace else.
Many of the vignettes are lifted straight from earlier Reynard stories, which, if you watch my last video, you know all about.
Just grab and pull it out!
The animals in this world live in a quasi-civilized setting where clothes are an afterthought and quadrupedal locomotion is only observed if you don't need your hands to gesticulate. The Grimm's Fairy Tale Classics version features a courting ritual involving pea sniffing, and like all adaptations, culminates in the fox leading the wolf into an underground larder. Wolfie attacks the food like it's cocaine and he's an 80s animation executive, which results in him getting too fat to squeeze out the way he came in. Oh well, I hope this family likes Terwolfen. Let's consider this meat belly for a moment longer before I move on. This is just me when I go to Korean barbecue. Mother Hole is a story about two girls who go down a well. It features a rabbit similar to the one in Alice in Wonderland. He doesn't seem to be a part of the original text, but he is a nice addition. A white rabbit's natural state is one of waistcoats and top hats, and preferably a watch chain. Otherwise, how is he gonna know what time it is? Duh. I ask you, what could be furrier than 6 princes being turned into swans? How about a culture in which a woman slaves away creating hair shirts to transform the men back, is accused of sorcery, and continues diligently and thanklessly to slave away right up until she's tied to a burning pyre and saved seconds before death by the intervention of her brothers? I'm just thinking of fursuit makers, mostly women, in a fandom plagued by the specter of willfully unexamined misogyny. The plot of this one is almost too painful to discuss and involves a new mother starving on a cliff for 3 days. Oh, and her little brother was turned into a cute little deer.
Oh, my poor little brother.
I'm sorry, I just got too greedy.
Don't worry.
This episode famously had a depiction of breastfeeding cut from the American release. There's that misogyny again. You know, breastfeeding, the thing that mothers have to do to support their baby. The thing that develops closeness between a mother and a child? Oh, but of course, because men think boobs are sexy, you have to censor that. Absolutely diseased society we live in. 4 brothers go out into the world to find their livelihoods and end up apprentices to average dudes who are akin to the gods because they impart incredible superpowers to our protagonists. Also, they save a princess from a tubby dragon. This story begins with this poor little demon cutie trapped in a bottle and begging for help. I'd let him out. Adorable creature, love him. Cut to this rotten little woodcutter's son who finds the bottle and immediately lets him out so he can turn fat and macro in that order.
Wonderful! What's to be my reward?
You've been so kind. I'll swallow you whole instead of eating you in little tiny bites.
Oh no!
Yum. Oh yes.
Naturally, a struggle ensues. You'd be hungry too if you were trapped in a bottle for the devil knows how long. After that, the story pursues a happy ending, wherein the boy's father passes away and he goes wandering around in a fugue, and eventually ends up back in the bottle himself.
Every story ends so happily.
I told you it was a lie.
Hey, you're a princess. You could marry me, couldn't you?
But I'm too young to get married.
I would be remiss to not mention these talking frogs.
But what can you do?
Plenty. I'm a prince, too.
Get down from there. You are not.
Oh, yeah? The gnomes in the forest told me that all frogs were once princes, huh?
Gnomes are fools.
And these delightful... kappa? Demons?
You're a human being, aren't you?
Hey, human beings aren't allowed to come into the Fairies' castle.
A guy makes a deal with a spindly little devil fellow to get riches. In exchange, he must not bathe or cut his nails or trim his beard for 7 years. Wow, I can't believe every furry I've ever met is under one of these pacts. I guess that's why we have suspiciously wealthy furries crop up every 7 years. Anyway, he has a real hard time of it, but eventually the wandering beast meets none other than Beauty's dad, and you know how it goes after that.
Don't do it, man!
What? A beer?
Here's a look at what's coming up today on Nick Jr. after these messages.
Youngest daughters are the least likely to be evil. This one might have all the hallmarks of an Aesop story, but it's actually a very similar Low Saxon fable. Interestingly enough, the hedgehogs who are trying to beat the obnoxious hare in a foot race also recall the story of the tortoise and the hare in this tale. The awful rabbit is blind to the fact that the hedgehog he's racing is actually a family of hedgehogs. Look at this prickly little hogwife. Because he can't tell them apart. Oof. I don't know where this trope started, but it really feels like an eternal certainty that rabbits are assholes. If you're a rabbit furry or a defender, you might be able to shed some light on why in the comments. Or could it be that it's not rabbits, but hares who are always so mean? According to Old English superstitions, one did not say the name of this animal for fear of inviting unluck. Some of his other names are the Stealaway, the Evil Met, the Grass Biter, the Friendless, and so on. The brave little tailor doesn't have much, but it does have these chunky, sleepy boys who the tailor tricks into having a wrestling match.
Bullseye!
I don't get it. Why don't they just do push-ups to prove superiority like every other lizard? This is a great story about respect. Big Dumb Bear goes toddling along secure in his misbegotten monarchy when he hears the wren is the true king of the forest. Oh hey, Wolf and Fox are an item again.
Hey, Fox, wake up, it's important.
It better be. I was having the best dream.
Wren's kids are very proud.
So scram!
These princes have got the manners of an angry warthog.
And Wren is a bit of a warhog.
This means war, General.
So things get out of hand quickly and turn into Fire Emblem as we get to see war planning and war waging in detail. The fox has the clever idea of using his tail to signal advance or retreat.
When my tail's raised up like this, that's the signal to go on the attack. It means hit 'em with all you've got.
Typical fox behavior involving the raising and lowering of a tail. Naturally, with the war hinging on the fox's rear end, the avians secure victory by repeatedly penetrating the fox in the butt and signaling an early retreat. Ouch. Is this how furries get that bee sting thing? I never understood that, but it does kind of make sense when you think about it. Death becomes a young boy's godfather, and the boy grows into a successful doctor.
When I'm at the foot of the bed, there is nothing that you can do to save them.
When he denies his godfather's blood price for his skills, Death shows his true colors by turning into this cool beak demon.
Now then it would be in your absolute best interest to pay attention this time.
I love this guy. I wouldn't kick him out of bed whether he was standing at the head or the foot. Now I'm going to close off by talking about two of the scariest episodes of the show. Fast forward to this time if you're easily frightened. Dear video heads, I was watching this show back when it was in reruns on Nick Jr. circa 1993. Every article I can find states the Bluebeard episode never aired on TV, but why, then, would Discotheque's fabulous 2021 Blu-ray release of the series include an English dub version, quote, edited for younger children? I'm of the opinion that it did air because for decades I keenly remembered the oppressive mood of the story and the big reveal at the end. For those of you who don't know, Bluebeard, or Au le Bas Bleu, is Charles Perrault's immortal tale of an innocent young girl who is the new bride to a fearsome, frightening bridegroom named Bluebeard. He is an indulgent husband-to-be, showering her in finery, and soon she becomes accustomed to married life. One day, Bluebeard must leave on business and presents the bride with the keys to his estate. She is allowed, even encouraged, to open almost every door. Only one is off limits, a mysterious door with its own little golden key. The bride ignores his warnings and opens the door to find the corpses of his 7 previous wives. When Bluebeard returns home, he immediately realizes her guilt, because the key is magic and stains with blood she cannot wash off. He's disappointed, even devastated by yet another bride's infidelity, and he prepares to kill her.
Stand where you are, Joseph. The time has come. Now!
But her brothers arrive to save her at the last minute and murder Bluebeard. This story, of course, is a psychosexual masterpiece juxtaposing the oft dreadful duties of a wife with insatiable human curiosity toward impassable boundaries. That force that makes you open the bag even when it has a dead dove inside.
I don't know what I expected.
You might be saying, but Arlena, Bluebeard isn't a Grimm fairy tale, it's a Charles Perrault fairy tale. Well, you couldn't be more right. But we welcome Perrault in this house, and I will not fail to mention the story may have reached its apex in Favorite Author Reveal, Angela Carter's short story, The Bloody Chamber.
I should say that, I'm not a great dog lover myself, but when my grandmother used to tell me the story of Red Riding Hood when I was a very little girl, very little girl, she used to tell it me with actions, and she had no truck with all the consoling versions of it where the woodcutter comes and opens the wolf up. She believed in ending it on the wolf eating Red Riding Hood, and when she came to the bit where it says, and then he leapt upon her and gobbled her all up, she used to leap upon me and pretend to gobble me all up. And I thought this was wonderful. I thought this was quite ecstatic. I used to squeak and shiver and say, "Oh, Granny, Granny, do it again." And very often, to please me, she would. And therefore, though I may have, I personally may have an image of grandmothers as very aggressive people, I tend not to think of wolves in the same way.
I just wanted an excuse to show this first edition cover again. Bluebeard is a stuff of nightmares and an extreme scenario to be certain. But as Angela Carter says in a 1976 article for New Society magazine, marriage in itself is no party. Better learn that right away. Archaic patterns of ritual initiation, forbidden thresholds, virgin martyrs, and sacrificial victims. All the elements that our more barbarous times rejoice in for their own sakes, as part of the rarest show of the unconscious, are subsumed by Perrault into a project for worldly instruction. Bluebird's widow uses her inheritance to buy good husbands for herself and her sister Anne. Marital content may only be acquired in the marketplace after a good deal of consumer research. Indeed, it seems such tales were as much about a ghastly introduction to the horror and sorrow of being an adult as anything else. Speaking of horror and sorrow, why don't we talk about Donkey Skin, aka Thousand Fur, aka Allerlara? In this story, a king loses his wife to illness, promising her he will never marry another woman unless she is as beautiful as she is, and possesses her golden hair. He looks high and low and decides that the only woman who fits the bill is his own daughter. Grimm's fairy tale classics rightly cast the king as an obsessive madman, and the episode opens with him terrorizing the princess.
The king had worked himself into an insane frenzy over the scandalous idea that he was to marry.
His incestuous pursuit ends with a great fire that consumes him and the castle. This story doesn't contain anything furry other than the headpiece of the princess's costume. But it is a masterful character study and a realistic portrayal of grief and trauma much more incisive than anything a modern film will try and sell you. Panic attacks are not something that you overcome just because a marketable dog character puts his paw on your chest. In contrast, Donkey Skin reveals the first half of the fairy tale in the princess's PTSD flashbacks. They're triggered by otherwise innocent situations that remind her of what she's been through.
This really must stop. No, it isn't right. I'm sorry.
The other characters are confused. They don't understand this agony which has all but made her mute, and she cannot find the words to tell them. But instead of being relegated to an inert damsel in need of saving, the story follows her perspective as she struggles to overcome and find love while making a new life for herself in the kitchens of a grand castle in a neighboring kingdom. For all the talk of the Me Too movement taking abusers to task and our supposed awareness of these realities, there are still countless stories of harassment and worse affecting women everywhere, in every industry, and yes, in the furry fandom too. 1 in 5 women in the US will be the victim of an attempted or completed rape in her lifetime. This is the culture we live in. I've been harassed countless times at conventions, stalked, flirted with in full elevators, cornered on the party floor, had people take photos of me out of suit without asking, and every single time I had to grin and bear it rather than make a fuss. And who wants to turn a con into a crime scene? But that's just the problem. The abusers are the ones overstepping and committing crimes, but women don't want to cause a fuss or ruin things by speaking up. I could not do anything because the world despises nothing more than a victim, and many more egregious crimes go unreported for these reasons and more. When I tell my stories, they are often waved away as inconvenient examples of outlier experiences in a fandom which caters heavily to men's needs, and the misogyny running rampant in the fandom for decades seems as insidious as ever. Just because furries are sexually liberated and the community is a haven for queer folks does not mean it is immune to the same mistakes the rest of society makes. Just about every woman I know has been a victim of some kind or another, and I've seen people discount their stories, distance themselves because the hurt makes them uncomfortable, or attack them for creating art to process their pain. Turning a blind eye to a victim only encourages future abuse and abusers. And I'm quite proud of this show for doing such a deep dive on such a difficult topic and showing that victims can live happily ever after.
Huh?
What?
We need more examples in the media of victims overcoming pain and trauma to be happy. Otherwise, we might not know that it's possible. All of this is to say that despite what a victim goes through, they still deserve happiness and care, and the princess in Donkey Skin gets it. She learns to laugh again, and it is implied her newfound family will continue to care for her even when the worst of her traumatic memories come back. And that's really all victims want from their friends, families, and communities. Now that that's over, welcome back to the fun and fancy-free world of fairy tales. That's about all I have for Grimm's Fairy Tale Classics, but I encourage you to go out and watch this show. It's available on YouTube, it's available via Discotex Blu-ray release, and you will not regret it. Japanese and English versions have a different feel, with the Japanese version having no narrator and different music. But I really think both deserve to be watched, because in the Japanese version you'll see a lot more scenes that were cut out and the feel is just different. Either way, they're both some of the comfiest media while also having, as I've discussed, difficult themes that we need to be engaging with. Remember, fairy tales have, for centuries, if not longer, been appropriate media for children. And while I'm not one to decide what is appropriate media for children these days, I do think more people need to respect children's minds and how they grow instead of discounting them as brainless Minecraft drones. Or maybe what we really need are more parents who are willing to sit down and read fairy tales to their children instead of stick them on a tablet for 8 hours. That's about all I have for today, but I'd love to thank my wonderful Laserdisc Patreon supporters. For only $5, you too can give an evil sorceress control over your true name. So thank you, Dornassus. Yeah, my first Japanese patron, very cool. Chronoflash, Sabertail, Dominic Foxley, Victor the Mewtwo, Gilbaro Khan, JF, Delano Possum, Alex McFall, Joe the English Otter, Silly Scotty Dog, Kooky Trails, Lexo, Stubadub, Crown, Norman Whitetail, Princess Isabella, Vera Lycaon, and Miorja. And they all lived happily ever after. Goodbye.